angled thing. Anyway, here we have Tim's Epiphone AFD. Interestingly, it's new, but it's got some gunge on the back. Sticky stuff where a sticker's been on it. Anyway, I think it's new, and it's the flat-bodied budget version, bolt-on neck, with it's nothing clever. Oops. Built-in tuner, little flashing light thing there, which is pretty cool, with a battery that goes with it in the back. All the little flashing lights off. It would dazzle you in a gig, that would. I'm just trying out this. Blimey, that's a stiff arrangement. Does everything? I think maybe everything does stiffen up. If I undo that, does this get looser? It does. That's quite clever. That's why it's called the magic arm. Da -da -da -da. Everything gets stiffer. Right, just a quick listen to how this sounds, and then. What's it in for? Well, it's in for a setup, and while we're at it, we're going to change the tuners and put on some 19:1 Wilkinsons that we've ordered in, which are sitting down there ready to go. But these get some flack, you know, in that they're dead simple, nothing complicated about them, but they're actually not bad sounding little units. Well, fairly thick sounding pickups, but they do. I've got metal, a bit of a brass pickup, plectrum here. Actually, they really come into their own when you crank up meaty. So let's have a see what happens with the tuning on this. Yank, 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 yank. Yank, yank, yank. Oh, I can feel that moving for miles. So, classic new strings on straight from the dealer, I guess. And last. Not bad actually, not bad. Pretty well stretched out. Well, I'll stick what gauge are these? They're pretty chunky. It's at least a 10. So I'm going to stick that. Stick a new one on there. Drag it down from here. Or a spare one, or a new one. It's a new one, but it's a kind of deliberately left there as a sacrificial one. But just to get this down off here with all these tools and bits of fret wire in the way. Right, we've got two there together which I can't separate until I just get them down first of all. We'll worry about that later. Right, there's a spare. Anyway, so this is the this is the Epiphone AFD, and it's actually not a bad guitar. I think they're good looking for a start. They're better looking than an awful lot of, I've done that again, that will last about 5 minutes. They're better looking than a hell of a lot of guitars, budget guitars out there. It's nice, even though it's a veneer and, you know, cheaply done, it doesn't matter, it's good looking, it's handsome. So here we have the spare 10. I'll stick it on because I'm going to need sacrificial strings on it. This is a bit on the nasty side. It's pretty dusty. Needs a good clean up. Anyway, we'll change over the tuners once we've done the setup. Come on to the fun stuff afterwards. Do the hard stuff first. Yeah. Okay, come in. Bandsaws arrived. Ta-da. Right, just got to put this string on, and I'm going to stop the video and go and check that out. Can't get out quick enough. Right. Okay, see you in a minute. Well, I think I've started this again. Is it running? Oh yeah, it is. My new special stand which I'm manhandling. Well, look, the bandsaw has arrived in, so that's going to be interesting. Let's move a couple of important things out of the way for the time being. You can go in there, my friend. Go on there, can you? Where's the hook? There's the hook. You can go somewhere like there. Okay. Right. So anyway, not really a guitar video, but for those who might be interested in the arrival of a Aldi bandsaw. We'll see. It's one of those things you don't even know if it's going to be one piece. Courier deliveries and all that sort of stuff. So I've got all these gifts to the guitar making self. Oh look, that's falling apart or something. The table. I think I'll just put this old thing, this lovely thing, up there for a minute, safely out of the way. So, yes, dead strings. Right, now there are things up here. We have an empty box here, which probably might get used. I'll do that there for a minute. We have a ton of sort of spare fret wire, which at the moment doesn't have a proper home, so it's going to go back on here, which of course as you know means all of this is going to get messy again, but I will tidy that up later, I promise. Henry there with his nozzle doing sander duty, which is pretty good. So let's get that out of the way. Book with drawings and useful things. Go on there for a minute. That box has got to go as well. And a bunch of spare parts which need filing at some point. And some chunky Becky to make another guitar. That's 3 bits which I'm going to mark right now so I know which they are. And once that's done, then I can lift out the bits with this thing poking me in the eye. Thick, 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 thick. I'm going to do another thicker Eki SG thing. Now this is an interesting thing. We lift all of this up. Just put it on there for a minute. There's that. Out the way. I hate the sound of those things. Polystyrene thing. Now, this has already come apart in some sort of shape or other. This is not a very solid thing to put it on. So we've got a sort of key here which has come undone. So put that back on and shut it. It looks like it's okay. Right, here's our little blade thing. God, it's tiny. It's not going to be huge, is it? It's a little toy thing. We have the entire kit comprises of a plastic thing for pushing wood through, some Allen keys, a screwdriver, a free screwdriver, amazing, a book, and I guess there was a is there a key in there? Well, no. So how do you lock and unlock these things? What do you lock them with? Do you lock them with this? Is that it? I guess it is really. I suppose you do. It's like that. There's your belt. Wow, this is such a toy thing. So we have to make a solid base to put this on, and that isn't it right now. Okay, so we have the 2 easy to open things for our little miniature bandsaw. This is really tiny. It's funny how you don't know the size of these things until you actually see them. Okay, so we have an undoey thing here which allows us to pull that up to there, I guess. There we go, there's our cutting thing. We'll get our table. Sorry if this isn't that interesting, but hey, let's try pulling that out there, pulling that up there. Better view? Who knows? It's weird. Don't know what happened there. This arm is quite good. I do sort of like it. Okay, we have a table of sorts and some little bits under there. So it's going to want to cut that way. And that's like that, I guess. That's how it goes. And this comes off there first. Come on, out of there. Thank you. Throw that on the floor. Put that on the floor. And these bits here, and it has to go on there somehow. So that will come in there like that. And that goes down in there like that. A little arm, okay, like that, and then we come out with that, 1 and 2, I'm thinking we put that on the outside, that's what I'm thinking, but it could be wrong, on the outside, one of those back on, one of these back on. And that one's back on with this thing. So that sort of done that. So I don't know what's the, okay, so we get an angle that we can do that way, and we have flat, which should be theoretically is on the flat. And then we got the little thing that goes under here. Side like that. Hold on. Something like that. Now, I'm not quite sure what its purpose is, but there'll be a reason for it, I'm sure. Does this, okay, this, I presume, no, that doesn't have anything to do with the rail part, whether this just stiffens this up, keeps it together some way or other. I guess it stiffens it up. Then we have a rail here, with some, I don't know why that's got plastic on it, but it does. And then this theoretically goes up against there. She was a bit flimsy. And that goes in there like that. Come on, 80 quid. Who's complaining? Look, it's done. Well, sort of. So what would we want to do really? Well, first of all, we want this to be stable, which it is not. We could probably tie it down. On and off, wobbly wobbly. Right. So we'd want it on a stable surface, which means something like something I've just thrown away. Well, I'm sure we can find something, a piece of, there's a big chunk of timber in here somewhere. Maybe I put it to the back, I can't remember now. Not that one. Must be in here. Hidden away in the back. Something like this, I think. I might just be the thing. Just about the right height. So, bolt that to there. There, and then that would pretty much sit nicely there. Okay, so we have a tensioner for the blade, we have a fairly loose blade, we have the adjuster for the depth of cut, guide, we have the blade. It's not appearing to be connected to any thing. Where would the, that doesn't make sense. So that looks a bit odd. There's a bearing there, but why? I have to read the instructions, eh? Anyway, there you go. I'll take you on a little quick fly up view. It may or may not prove to be any good. Are you running still? You are. You never know. So here it is. Here it is. Oh, sorry, I didn't even put my finger on there. So it's pretty tiny and straightforward. Push your piece into there. There, like that. Out of the way. Your motor, your extractor, and you've got this here, which confuses me a little bit. This bit here, which is got a bearing on it, but there's nothing going to run. The bearing isn't going to run against anything, is it? How does that work? That's a bit odd. It runs against the side of the bearing. That's weird. So how does the bearing work? Does it move on anything? Nope. That's just bizarre. Straight round. That raises or reduces the tension. That's weird. So what's the bearing's role there? I don't get it. Unless that's pushed out over the bearing, but that makes it go sideways. Yes, well, I'll look at the book first. I'll go and get something to eat and have a look at the instructions. And that's it. There's a, well, not a bearing, there's a guide down there. And that's your lot. Some brushes to clean the thing down there. So it's between those 2 points. Don't know what the bearing is. Find out in a minute. Okay, so ooh, look, there we are. Mr. Morris is in here. Morris, come here. Say hello to the new camera thing. Oh. Same camera, new mount. Crunch. There you go. Look, hey, Mr. Morris. Right, Tim, we got your Epiphone. We're going to get going. And in this procedure, we're going to do a nice low setup, change the nut for a bone nut, stick a bunch of new 19:1 Wilkinson tuners, Grover style tuners, fret level if necessary, and get everything done. You need a place to sit, don't you? You decided that's your place to sit. You just decided it, Morris. You decided you're going to flop down there and nothing was going to make you nothing's going to make you move. Oh, Morris. Mr. Morris, he's more than just a mascot, isn't he? He's a character. Ah, you can rub your nose against that now without getting the camera. Come on. No. Right, we need to sort of get you down. Fancy sitting down on here? There you go. Ready? He hates being picked up generally. There you go, there's your spot. Nice place for you to sit down. Right. Here we go. Da, 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 da. First thing we're going to do, check the neck relief. Very low, I mean very little, but enough. First fret action is quite high and the last fret action is quite high. So, where did I put my screwdrivers now? Oh yes, new home. I'm going to artificially set my first fret action with a capo, and then I'm going to adjust down the bridge until I got it somewhere where I want it, and it's currently sitting at just over 2, which we don't need. Just over 1, which we don't need. Let's try down here. 1.5 to I think that's probably good. Just under 1.5 and just over 1. Now that's going to change because we lift that up, but that's fine. Now I'm going to take off this nut, and while we're at it, do we need, no, let's not adjust the truss rod. We don't need to. Wow, changing. I've got this magic arm. I'm getting used to how to use it. It was a trade in from the random radiographer, who this time made my day by sending me a not only this in part exchange for a setup, but what am I doing? Oh yes, even better, sent me a stereogram and a little viewer. I love stereographic images, and I love the fact that he sent a little viewer, and then I was able to view not only a bunch of stereograms or stereoscopic images as found online in various different places, Victorian things, and even some more modern films on YouTube, side by side, SBS I think it's called. Anyway, I was not only able to view that, but I was also able to look at the 3D stereoscopic images of his Rally GL 400 that he's taken, which is quite funny to see them in 3D. So the nut is already loose, so it will come out dead easy. Right, so that's, we kind of know that that's already too high, and then we kind of line this up by comparison. This is actually quite a bit lower. Now, yes, Epiphone, the land of the high nut. Tall nuts, baby. So I have a feeling, given the amount we had to take off, this might just be a pound for pound drop-in replacement, which would be pretty damn cool if it was. Save us a bit of effort. I think you might be too low. That's those cheeky Epiphones. They really do make it difficult. It's yeah, it's just a characteristic of the brand. They have unusually deep nut slots. Matron. Which by the time we've put this under load, now that is bizarre. It's too high over the that's a bit odd, isn't it? Why is that the way it is? That's weird. Okay, weird. It's too low, a little bit under, which is a shame, because it would be great if I could just drop that in. Let's have a look at one more type of nut which may be tall enough for this. Let's have a look. This one here. This is a unbleached bone nut, and it's taller in the Epiphone tradition. It's still a bit low. See what we got. Actually, I might just make it. that string gone. Likewise, this string and the other one. Come on. Just high enough. And in fact, it's a bit high on this end, but we're working from the low end out. That's workable. We'll probably need to reshape it a little bit at the other end. Okay, good. Put those away. So we have a cream bone nut. I need to get some more of those unbleached bone nuts. They seem to fit Epiphones better, so we'll go with that. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to get hold of the file that I lost and now refound miraculously. I'm going to go with our correct guide metric of 0.3 millimeters, and we're going to work outwards from the base side first. I'm going to set all of these to 0.3. using a standard set of files. And then if I need to, just adjust it with a kind of wide V, just to make sure we don't get any sticking. You can still see a gap, so when you see the air gap, it tells you that you've still got some way to go. And 0.3 is a conservative sort of height. It's very light, but still not as low as, for example, a capo would set. When you put a capo on, it defaults to very low action, which is why a capo guitar can suddenly feel very easy to play by comparison. A little bit more. Good. Change over to the 42, check the height. Notice we're going to be pretty much close to on the mark at this end, so just be careful not to overcut, if anything, down here. I like it where it is. I'm going to leave that right where it is. That's happy. I'm going to work outwards now from the G. Okay, so the aim is to get this down to 0.3 of a mil, and that's what I found over the years equals a very nice low first fret action, which makes the guitar easy to play at this end, and prevents a number of intonation or tuning problems where it's very common when you have a too high a first fret action for your fingers to press these notes sharp, and it's easy to do if the action is high. It doesn't have to be very high, so when I say high, I mean anything above 0.5 of a millimeter at the first fret tends to play sharp, and the more you go up from 0.5 of a millimeter to 0.6, 0.7 upwards towards 1, the sharper it goes, quicker it goes sharp when you press them. So it's a very common problem, and this process of setting a low first fret action takes care of that very effectively, at the same time as making the guitar very easy to play. So that's the aim of it. Now it's a very precise action that we're aiming for, 0.3 of a millimeter. You have to kind of work quite hard to get it to that action, and that's why I use bone, because bone is a sort of dependable material for getting low light actions. Other materials tend to behave differently in my experience. For example, plastic tends to go shaggy and spongy and all other words beginning with E ending in E, but that makes it very difficult to know where you are, and often you can overcut, or it makes them cuts in a way that leaves a little spongy mass to grab the strings. Now we're just on to the last one now. So these are around about 0.3 millimeters, thereabouts. Compared to this one right now is approximately 0.6 or 7 or something like that. It's quite high. So taking it down makes it much easier to play, and that the amount of difference is quite profound for such a small adjustment. So it's not until you've made this kind of adjustment to your guitar will you realise how tiring a previous action you had set was. It's often overlooked. We often think about or obsess a little bit about the playing action at this end, and we often think that that's the tiring, where we have to really squeeze the notes. It's actually down here I found is most tiring, and I found that by reducing this action down here, and that's when you've reduced it you could really feel the difference. Now if you haven't played a guitar before and it's just come to me directly for setup, then it's not something you'd notice so well, which is kind of a bit of a shame for me, because there's nothing nicer than you knowing how it was first and then being able to feel the direct improvement. However, what you'll still notice when you get this is how light and easy it is to play at both ends. Now what we'll do, once I've got this set, we'll check the notes, because we'll have set all three major parts of our playing action. We started by checking the neck relief and making sure it had a little bit of curve in it, albeit not too much, and then we set the last fret action to 1.5 and just over 1, and finally, out of those three interrelated things, I'm setting the first fret action nice and low as well, and just trying to free the slots up so that they don't grab the strings. Now this will then give me a very nice low action. Now if I just stretch these strings a minute, can't hear. What I'll do is just tune this up again, courtesy of this. Okay, so that's the basic action set. Neck relief checked first, little, not much, but some. Lowered this to give me a low action there, whilst capoing this off so it was the lowest it could be. Now we've set that first fret action, which is a little bit higher than if clamping it like this, but not much. So our action there is nice and low. With our new bone nut as well, so that's cool. Now the question here is, quite simply, do all the notes on this guitar play, or are some of them or any of them choked off? And that's what we need to find out. So we've kind of run up not bad. A couple of spots down here on the low strings and up here on the high strings. So we're in a position now where we can get the old fret leveling gear ready, because it's pretty good actually. I'm very impressed for an Epiphone, or for a budget guitar, that's sort of playable. Can't see what I'm doing now. That is actually quite playable, but we're here to get it perfect, as close to perfect as possible. So what we're going to do is do a very light fret leveling, and actually we don't even need to do anything. We don't need to glue the nut in or anything, it can stay right there. So we're going to do some fret leveling now to make this as close to perfect as it can be, and this is a straightforward 12-inch radius neck, fingerboard I should say, sorry. So it's pretty forgiving in terms of you can get a nice low action and be able to bend notes quite easily. Tighter radii, like Telecasters, Strats, some vintage guitars, tend to be much smaller radius, down to the 9.5 and even 7.25, and that geometry of that setup is actually prevents you getting too low an action. It kind of becomes impossible to get. You can get all the notes playing at that action, but you can't get all the bends you want playing, and they choke out eventually because the action is so low and the geometry of the curve. You're pushing the string uphill to get the bend, and the anchor point is down there at the bottom of the valley and down there again, and that disappears any clearance that you otherwise would have had. So it's pretty difficult to do. So I'm just going to tune this back up in a minute. Use the old tuner again one more time, and then we'll get the fret leveling file out, and we'll do it the banana way. While I'm doing this, I'm also listening for any pings at the nut. Because the reason why doing your nut slots is so important is because the tuning stability of your guitar is dependent primarily on two things that I've found over several hundreds of setups now. First one is the amount of slack in your strings, which you can physically stretch out when you put new strings on. I'll show you how at the end. And the second major component is the condition of your nut slots. And if you don't get both of those things taken care of, your guitar will go out of tune, no matter what you do. And it doesn't have anything to do with the tuners. By the way, we're changing them here for the smoothness of operation of these better quality 19:1 ratios, not because these don't hold tune, they do. It's a complete myth to think that they in any way prevent guitar staying in tune. They have nothing to do with it. So, what keeps your guitar in tune is having fully stretched out strings and ensuring that your nut slots are smooth or clear and run freely. And if you get both those things taken care of, it will play and stay in tune from that point onwards. And it's that simple. So getting the nut slots right is the first part of it. When I put the new strings on, same gauge, I hasten to add, then I will stretch those out, and the combination of stretching those strings till there's no slack left and the fact we've done the nut slots for this gauge of strings will keep it in tune. This is the fret leveling part, precision fret leveling, because what I just did was I've tuned this curve of this sandpaper covered truss rod to exactly the same curvature as is in the neck, and I'm then following that curve to level out any relatively high frets. Now, it's not absolute. I only care about frets being level relative to each other, and that's what this tool does. It takes care of that. Now, stopping to have a look, let's see what you can see. Let's take you off the back for a minute. So Tim, you've probably seen this before, but just give me a look through. I don't know how you can see in this light. Quite a lot of cutting there, so it's a high fret there, just touching there, not a lot there at all. Some there, little touch here and here. So it tells us it's doing some work down here on those frets, which we kind of expected, and I expect to see a load more of the frets cutting up down here. The fact that it's cutting at different places all along the length tells me pretty much that we've got the curvature of the neck mapped perfectly in the truss rod. If it cut in one place or more than another, then we might suggest we need to recalibrate, but we're pretty much spot on there. Now we expect at that point all notes to play clearly, which they do, and we'll use the same calibration or the same setting. Move the next string out of the way to do the next one, and this is the B track, as I call it, and again just pretty much using gravity, guiding this truss rod up and down, and we'll expect to see it cut more of the high fret, the top of the high fret. It's no surprise if it does that. That's what kind of expecting to see. Again, a little bit here, some none, none on this section, some a lot, some little bit, none up here. So again, we're cutting where we sort of felt like the fret problem was, or the uneven fret problem was. So that's as beautiful and simplistic as this method is. And you know, now each time I move now, from now on, I'm going to recalibrate the tool with tiniest of movements. Now this tool, I've got a few different truss rods that I use for this, but this particular one I like because it has quite a stiff body, and it stays rigid when I use it. Others are thinner and a little bit more accurate, but they tend to flex a little bit more, so you have to bear that in mind. But it's really worth recalibrating each time you move what I call the track, to make sure you're getting the best levelling done. And again, this is what I'm doing, exactly what I expected. It's cutting up on the tallest frets, the ones that we can see already are going to be high. Now the question is, how much am I doing it? How do I know? Well, a lot of it's based on experience. But the great thing about this method, which you don't have with other methods, one of the great things about this method, is that you can try every note as you go along, and that will tell you exactly where you are. And as I say, you literally cannot do that with any other fret leveling method, so it's why I like this. Now this particular truss rod for me has its limitation in that it doesn't go completely flat. So as we get flatter and flatter, which often the neck relief changes as we go across the radius of the fingerboard, but as we get across to, let's say it gets flatter, this rod won't go completely to flat, and if we need it to, I might have to switch to another one that does. This one has, even with the adjuster relaxed, this one is just slightly curved. Okay, all looking good. And again, we do the same thing, no guesswork, we just check the notes. Everything playing at a really, really low fast action, and that's what this is all about. So there are a lot of reasons why I use this method, but I've done it maybe 700 odd times now, and I trust it very much. And having done it that many times, you do develop a sort of feel for it, of course, and you know when things are going well, and you also know when there's an issue and you need to stop and rethink. And if anything feels wrong instantly, you stop and recalibrate, just to be on the safe side, and look at it from a different angle to make sure we're getting nice level frets. Now I'm expecting this to continue cutting up here, because that's what I detected when we played it beforehand. Like it. And now we're heading for the last one. So it might feel quick, but this is years of doing this experience coming into play. Actually literally years, so a good 3 or more years, 4 years possibly now, doing it this way. Okay, ready to go. So that should be the last one we need to do. Where's the rubber foot? There it is. Here we go. Last E track. Okay, picking a few little high bits off the end there, which looks good. There we are, ready to try that last. Tiny bit more in this E track. It's very low, it's under 1.5 millimeters. Okay, looking good. tuning. Great, happy. So that is our fret leveling done, just like that, lightning speed. Thank you to the Epiphone for being fairly easy to work with. It's collaborated well. I'll keep this set of strings as a sacrificial set for something else, because the next stage now is to re-profile the frets. So having leveled them, we put some flat spots into them, which we don't want. So the job now is to reshape the sides of the frets to remove those flat spots. We want them to be nice arch formed shapes again, and we have a special tool that we use for that, and it's a tool that I bought 3 or 4 years ago from Stu Mac, and it has to represent very good value for money, even though at the time it felt like a very expensive purchase. I'll do these, I'll untangle these shortly. Yeah, we'll use the crowning file. Okay, and so we remark these frets so we can see what we're doing, and in this case the marker pen allows us to work on the edges of the file, the fret, sorry, without touching the middle part, the crown. So we keep on working it and stop, so long, making sure that we leave an untouched line down the middle of the fret, and that will tell us that we've reshaped the fret but without reducing its height anymore, which is clearly what we don't want to do, having just consciously spent time leveling them all out to make them even. So I'm watching the light here to see where we've got the little line of marker pen, and getting it as thin as possible without over cutting it. We don't want to drop these frets any lower. So many of them just require a very quick going over. And the speed of doing this shows you how little I've actually taken off those frets. It's only where I stop and spend a little bit of extra time that represents where we've really done any flattening. So it looks worse than it is when you use this method. Many people, for the first time they do it, do freak out a bit, understandably. And it's good to, because you can, if you're not careful, you take your truss rod and you can wear your frets to nothing if you keep on going. But it isn't the case that you get there very quickly, particularly if you use something like 400 or 600 grit as your leveling sandpaper. You get there very, very slowly. So you have to kind of go a long time with your brain off to do serious damage. Keep awake and focused on what you're doing, and awake to, if something doesn't feel right, you'll get into the habit of doing it very effectively, and your second sense will tell you when something isn't progressing as normal. Obviously you have to do it a few times for that, but when you do get that intuition, or that experience more like, you'll be able to spot very quickly when something's wrong, and then you have to stop and rethink the whole thing and ask yourself, what am I doing wrong here, or why is this feeling different from normal or previous sessions. Okay, so that, ladies and gentlemen, is the fret leveling done. And actually, what we can also say is that is the setup done, because the beauty of this method is you do all the setup stuff first. So we set the guitar up the way we want it first off. We don't sort of do loads of stuff, fret leveling, and then come back and set the guitar up. We do it first, and we then level the frets to make the action we've carefully chosen play well. And that means once we get to this stage, we have some more kind of dog work to do, if you like. We need to polish these frets out into a playing condition, but we don't need to do any more of the precise work, meaning that once we've polished the frets out, we can basically restring, or in this case we can change the tuners out, then restring. And providing we restring with a similar or the same gauge, the neck and the frets will all return to the position we had them in when we leveled them under playing tension. Now that playing tension is, or the stringing tension is very important. We don't do it in a curve just for fun. There's no intrinsic reason why it's better that way. Well, there is a small reason, but it's not massive. The reason, one of the benefits, a small side benefit if you like, of doing it this way, is that when you see, I can take these off, I can do anything I like, turn them I don't have to record where I was. I just know that I'm going to be able to go back to a nice low action, and I will aim back for about 1.4 and 1.2, 1.1 on the high side. But yeah, so this method is really good because rather than aim for an arbitrary overall levelness, we're not trying to get this absolutely precisely level. What we're trying to do is we're choosing an action that we like, and then we're making the frets comply with that. That is in effect the opposite way round of how most guitars are for most people when they buy them as youngsters. Okay, most of the time you're buying guitars that have the action is set or dictated by the condition of the frets. So they come out of the factory, technician in the factory will string them up, play them, listen to them, and then they'll raise the action until they can play notes without buzzing. And because all guitars have uneven frets, most of them coming out of factories will have the actions quickly raised up above the level of the uneven frets, and then out the door they go. So that's how it works. And the only way to improve that, or to reduce the playing action, is to do what I've done. There's a lot of misinformation about, around about how you do it. So, and a lot of misinformation in a lot of seemingly luthiers who take in guitars and charge money. A lot of people in forums who will tell people to adjust, if their frets buzz, tweak your truss rod. Well, it may be that a tweak of the truss rod may, in some cases, cure fret buzz, but it isn't. That isn't the answer to fret buzz. Fret buzz. There's a couple of different kinds of fret buzz, but uneven fret buzz is caused because one fret is sticking up relative to the ones either side of it, or it could be that one fret is extremely low relative to the ones either side of it, making these high in relation to that, and it's that one that kind of dictates where you go. So that kind of fret buzz can only be cured or fixed by one of two things. You either fix the uneven frets so you can play with a nice low action, or you give up the idea of playing with a nice low action and you set the action at the bridge high to clear the problems caused by that particular uneven fret. That's what most people have to do, because this is both a precise and time-consuming process, and as you can see, it takes confidence and a few years of some time of some experience of having done it, shall we say. It's not going to come instantly. There are some other methods that people use, and I started out using them. They're very effective compared to not doing anything at all, and I don't knock them. That's what I did to begin with. That's where you take your neck and you level the neck, make sure it's level, and then you level the frets with a file or a radius block with sandpaper or self-adhesive sandpaper, and that way you can level all your frets in one go. Now the plus side of that is that it's very simple in many ways. You still need to polish the frets out and sand them out so that they play nice and smoothly afterwards, but it's it's advantageous in that it's quick, it's quite simple, and as you go you can sort of check once you've done it by using your fret rocker to see if you've got any more clicking and rocking, which is the indicator of uneven frets. That's kind of good. The downside of it is, and there are a couple. The first one is that because you're doing it abstractly, i.e. the strings are off the guitar and you have really no way of telling if you've done enough leveling other than by reference to the absolute, which is your fret rocker, right? And that is a reference to absolute levelness, which, and this is another downside of it, is more level than you actually need. So you're taking, with that method, you're taking away more metal than you need to take away, because you're heading for an absolute level, when in fact you don't need to absolutely level your frets, you just need to level them enough to allow the chosen action to play properly. And that's what the string on method means you can do. The other benefit of the string on method is that it levels the frets with the compression effects of your string load at play on the neck and at play on the relative levelness of the frets. And there is a difference. There's something about the longitudinal compression of the neck under string loading which isn't at play when you level them with the strings off and the neck flat. Then you level to an absolute level in that condition, and when you put the neck back on and load it, you reintroduce that compression, and the effect of that is that it moves the frets slightly in relation to each other, which means the 100% level that you got at quite a high price of more fret metal than you needed to use is then set back to 95% level. You lose a percentage in this compression effect that you didn't have at play. Now, because this method that I've used fret levels with that compression at play at the time we do the leveling, then it's 100% level, and it'll be 100% level again when you reload the neck with the same gauge of strings and put it back into the playing position. And the bonus is you've done it with only as much removal of metal from the frets as is absolutely necessary to make the action that you've chosen play. And that means because you stop as soon as it plays cleanly or gets to where you want, you stop and you don't take any more metal away chasing an absolute zero or an absolute level. Concept of levelness that is practically useless to you. It just costs you fret metal, and for the satisfaction of being able to say, look, there are no clicks in my fret rocker, it must be precisely level. Well, fine, but you don't need precise level, you need enough level, and that's the important thing. The enough, the ability to do it just enough, saves your customer fret metal. And fret metal is the amount of months left before they have to take it for a refret someday in the future. So it's kind of critical that you preserve the life of the guitar as much as you can by taking as little fret metal away as you can in the process of making it play the best that you can. And that's what this method does really well. And that's why I won't go back to any other method, or the previous method I used, because its benefits are too great. And that's basically, that's that. So occasionally I get people come by and scream and shout, what the hell is the point of doing it this way? And sometimes they say that because they can't see the point of it. And even a lot of the people who criticise it don't watch the video, so they don't actually hear me saying this. That's okay. I don't expect them to watch 3 hours of talking or whatever. That's not what these videos are for anyway. So, but they don't, since they don't hear me say it and talk about it, they don't understand why, or they don't get the benefits of doing it this way. And because they don't get the benefits of doing it this way, it just seems stupid to them, and so they proceed to judge it as such. And demand to know why I'm so stupid as to do it this way. Well, the reason I do it this way is exactly for the reasons I've said, and the difference will be felt when you come to play this, Tim, and you will feel how beautifully easy it is to play. And that's a combination of the precision fret leveling and the attention to the nut slots, amongst other things. Now, a lot of people say things like, they're quite demanding, some people, and they go, what are the exact measurements for neck relief on this and that guitar? And there is no absolutes, and people wish there were, and they desperately go off and try and find Fender's absolute on the subject. And of course, if you go to Fender's site, they will give you an absolute on the subject, and people then, from that, people then believe that it is an absolute precise science, which of course it isn't. So my answer to the question of how much relief do I put in my neck, and I say some. And you go, well, that doesn't help me. And I go, well, it helps you more than telling you 0.175 of a millimetre at the 17th fret with both frets held down, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Why does it help you more? Because it's far more useful for you to gauge some, i.e. start with none, i.e. flat, no relief at all, and then see what happens when you put some in. When does some become too much? Why is it too much? Why does it feel differently when you put a millimetre of relief into the neck on this guitar? Why does it feel different when you put 0.1 of a millimetre in? Which do you prefer? Which suits your playing style better? What can you describe credibly as the differences between them if you had to describe it to someone who didn't know anything about it? So instead of just spouting what somebody told you in a forum, it's so much better if you know what difference half a millimetre of extra relief in the neck here makes, because it will be your experience and you'll know why you're aiming for that. You notice if you look back at this, you'll see that when I started this, I held the guitar up, touched down those string at the end fret and the end fret, and I checked how much was in the middle, and I said some. Now I could tell you now, from knowing what I know of having done what I've done, I can tell you that that was probably about 0.01 of a millimetre. Right, very small amount of relief. Okay, well, that translates into nearly flat, but not quite flat. Now, I can tell you that nearly flat, but not quite flat, will feel nice and low and fast, compared to 0.4 instead of 0.1 will feel somehow much higher action around the middle, and it won't feel fast by comparison. If you like low and fast, you'll try and get away with little relief, but you might find you get fret clatter, which is when you hit the strings, they can't spin enough. There's no room, and they hit the frets. Now that's not the same as fret buzz, but you'll notice it and it will be tangible, and then you'll go, ah, okay, so adding some more neck relief, a little bit, tiny bit more, would give the strings more room to spin, and I wouldn't get that fret clatter. Now you already know you're not getting fret buzz because we've leveled it out, but now you've ironed out fret clatter by a little adjustment in the truss rod. Okay, it makes the action feel that tiny bit higher, but it's a compromise. You can't hit the strings hard and expect them not to spin in 3 dimensions. So anyway, so the point is, how much do I put on? As much as you want, or as little as you want. And better that you see what the differences are between them than you take my word and just aim at the same thing every time and get all obsessed about dialing in exactly the same amount. Because if you do that, you'll never figure out why one makes a difference over the other. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do 2 more things. I'm going to, well, a couple more things. I'm going to polish these out, and I'm going to go through a series of papers from 600 grit to 1000 to 1500. Then I'm going to go on a micro mesh series from 1500 through to 12,000. That will then be shiny, ready to play. I'm going to then take the tuners out, ream the holes out larger, and fit these new tuners, which are 10mm holes. Could drill them out on a bolt-on neck. Is not too difficult. We could take that off and offer it up to the drill. It's probably easier just to ream. Got a nice hand reamer. It's a nice quieter process. It's more tactile, so I'll probably do that. Put the new tuners on, see if we need new holes, fill any old holes if we need to, and then put new strings on, and set the intonation. I'll stretch them out first and then set the intonation, and we'll be done. Right, so I'm going to go off camera for this sanding part, but I'll come back on when I've put the new tuners on, because it's just drilling holes in wood. I'll put the new tuners on, come back on when I'm restringing it. Okay, see you in a minute. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting fiddle sticks into the existing holes, because I'm going to fill them Yeah, man, fill them, baby. So I'm just grabbing them, getting that glue in as far as I can, pushing them in, man. They don't even really need to be tapped in or anything. They'll just go in as far as they'll go in, and then we can cut them short in a minute and wipe off the excess glue, as they say in Wales. I feel entitled to do that Welsh impression, having lived there for how many years? I can't remember when I moved there. When did I move to Wales? 91 and left in. Okay, so I was in there. I was in Wales for 10 years. Yeah, I loved the sound of the Welsh accent, and I regularly used to joke with Claire more recently about getting her to try and pronounce words with ew in it, as in hue or stew or view or a few. So she'd never quite get her mouth around the ew sound. A few. Got a few of those, haven't you? Or this is Hugh Edwards, news at 10. Or what else is there? The dew. Dew on the ground. The dew in the view. Dew in the view. And then my son Theo had a friend called Matthew. Has a friend called Matthew. Matthew. And try as you might, Claire still can't get that pronunciation. So we torture her with it. Right, so what I now will do is get these, make a bit of a sticky mess, shoot them everywhere or nowhere, down the side. This water-based glue comes off pretty well. So this kind of gets us to a usable level of tidiness, and then we can do the rest, rub the rest off afterwards. Actually, as you can see, it comes off very cooperatively. So you can see the little stumps in there, and what I'll do is we'll sort of just scrape them back with a blade when it's all dry, and then just touch them up with some cherry lacquer, which means that it just won't stand out so far, and then we'll draw some new ones as we put the new tuners on. No, we don't need to leave those too long. We can get most of this sort of done, painted up and ready to go, and then put the new tuners straight on, so it only takes a little while. There we go. Nicely done. Okay, so those are little bits of wood on the floor. So we don't have to wait or lose any time. So what I can do now is get the, I was going to do this off camera, but what the heck, since we're now here, get me the reaming, de-reamer, which is this thing here, and then we're going to dunk. Start with, right, I've got to get rid of these. I've got these things known as, what are they called? You know what they're called. Those things, you know what I mean. Ferrules, 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 ferrules. There they come. Don't need much in the way of knocking, they come out pretty easily. And I'm never going to keep these because they don't ever get used again, so they'll go in the bin. Right, so now we have the fun part. So basically we're going to go to 10 mils. We're currently on 8, I expect. Right, so we're going to get 10 mils in there. Now this is obviously tapered, so we'll taper the other side as well a bit and meet in the middle. That's the idea. Ew, bit stinky wood. Now I could probably work out exactly the mark on this that's 10 mils. There should be a mark on it, but I can't find it right now. Nearly. Could drill this, you know, but I kind of prefer the physical thing. Right, so let's call that our 10 mil mark, shall we? And we can put a bit of tape on there, give us a clear idea of where we're aiming for.
Careful.
Yeah, indeed, careful.
You don't keep up.
Okay, so there we have our marker for 10. Started for 10. Go down to that level and there, and we can do it on all of them. Let's just tip this over and do the first one. Through and through. Tarnation. Which one was it we were doing? Oh yeah, that one. Go through quicker on this side because half of the thing's done. Right, tiny bit more on the back side. Okay, so I'm going to go offline and just do this and get these ready to go, and then we'll mark up some new holes and everything, and then we'll tidy up these things, and I'll come back when all those little bits are done. But it's all very unglamorous, but you get the drift of what's happening. Okay, see you in a minute. Righty ho! Well look, we have the new tuners on. And we have strings ready to go, we have stop bar, and we have the bridge and oiled fingerboard as well. So it is all ready. This is all a bit, I thought this was a new guitar, but it's not, is it? I don't know why I thought it was new. Maybe it's because the last couple I've had have been new. So correct me, no, apologies for the assumption earlier on that you hadn't played this before. I'm sure you have, because it's not new. Now, the old story about these things is they can go any which way you like. They can go this way or that way, and I put them any which way. I think there's a bit more room to reach the adjusters. Right, so here we go. New tuners on, new strings. And these are 10s going on. I tend to curl the ends up a little bit just to make it easier to get things on. Thread them up and through. The cows are still making a rattle noise out there. They sound like prehistoric monsters. Anyway, okay, so this is what I didn't show on the video was about 30 minutes of sanding, polishing, or the fitting of the tuners, or the filling of the old holes. So, thanks mate, that's just what we don't need. So, but in many ways this is I like this guitar as a model. It's quite a straightforward setup. You know, critics often complain about inexpensive or budget models, and you know, it's limited. Yeah, sure, it's flat slab bodied, it's veneered, but you know what? It's a fun little guitar, and it's fun to set up, or relatively easy to set up. But like all guitars, it needs a decent bone nut, and it benefits from some better ratio tuners, so that you get a smoother tuner action. And a little bit of fret leveling to make the action play nice and low. Once you've done that, this should be years of trouble-free fun, and it's got some great tones to it. I don't know what that was bleeping. So yeah, I keep, every time I see one, I think actually this isn't that bad at all. I mean, there is no there's no budget starter guitar that doesn't need some setup work, or put another way, doesn't need this amount of setup work. They all need the same. About the only guitars I've seen, apart from the odd 1 or 2% that just by chance came out the factory perfect, which is possible, occasionally it happens, or have been set up previously by someone else. Just the vast majority, there isn't a vast majority of guitars need it. Need the same work, the same fret work, and a couple of models, like for example some guitars like the Squier Classic Vibe series, some of those are universally or consistently good. Every time I've seen one, they've been incredibly good. But you know, the majority of budget guitars need setup work, and there's no way around it. So, which is why it's a great idea for most people who play guitar to develop basic skills to do this themselves. So, which is why I made my ebook. You bugger. So that if you don't have the money to spend on somebody like me to do this for you, you can learn to do it using my ebook, which covers this exact setup, plus shows you how to do it step by step, and also has videos, links to videos to every part of the setup shown. So I do a setup for an electric guitar, an SX brand Stratocaster, and I do a setup for an acoustic guitar, and the book shows high quality pictures of each of those setups, and then links to every stage of those setups duplicated in video, so if you have a mind to, you can follow those. But it's designed, the reason I made the ebook is it's basically designed to show people, get people to understand what was going on, instead of being kind of feeling like they were in the dark and having to go to somebody who takes money off them but doesn't leave them any wiser about what's been done, or any more confident about what's been done. And so the book, even if you don't do your own setups, the book will give you the confidence to approach luthiers with a different kind of confidence, I suppose, or yeah, approach them with better understanding of what needs to be done, and save you from being given the old flannel, which is a lot. I mean, I'm not just saying that because it's a cute thing to say to tout for business. I'm saying it because it's true. A lot of the customers, a majority of the people who come to me, tell me, and I had it again, same again with Peter, who came on the weekend, told me stories of taking his guitar in to a tech, paying good money, and then getting it back out either exactly the same or even slightly worse than when it went in. And I've had that story again and again and again, and I keep reiterating, you know, if bottom line is if you can't feel a difference in this setup, then I haven't done anything. I haven't done the work. You know, there's no way I will give this guitar back to a customer without, because I have the confidence that what I do will make a tangible difference to how it feels and plays. And there'd be no point doing it if I couldn't be certain of that. And I am certain of that, which is why I get good business and keep on doing it. But I see a lot of people who've been to other techs or whatever they call themselves, you know, guitar fixers or whatever, who clearly aren't confident about what they can do, and when they find they can't do anything for their £45 in their so-called normal setup, they give the customer the guitar back and come up with some sort of fudgy explanation about why it sounds or feels exactly the same, which often run to excuses like, oh well, Telecasters are always supposed to have high actions, or you know, Strats are always like this, or you can never X or Y with a Les Paul. It's just not true. Right, so I'm getting into the habit here of using this little tuner, which I left in the house for ages. Oh, of course I've got the tuner on here, haven't I? I forgot that. Now, I'm aware that when I was doing things, I moved these things around, so the action's probably changed, but that's not kind of the most important thing right now. So I'm just going to carry on stretching the strings with a view to getting rid of all and any of the slack that exists in these strings, because I want this thing, I want it to go back to Tim and to play in tune. Stay in tune from maybe the first he get it out of the bag and tweak it because it's travelled and maybe the tuners have been turned in the bag or whatever, but get it out, tune it once, and then just play it and forget about tuning it, not have to go there anywhere near that for the next couple of hours, if not more. And that alone is probably a new experience, you know, for most people it is anyway on the setup. Low as a something. It's incredibly low. Probably too low for my likings. So I'll just double check it, make sure. There's no point putting it too low and turning it back, buzzing and slapping against the frets. See, that's not bad. So that's according to that, that's on the mark where I wanted it. So it hasn't moved, which is good. So now I'm in the process of bending out as much of the slack as I can. Sounds pretty well intonated as well, actually. Now I'll use my phone for this next bit because that little tuner isn't very good for intonating. So here we go. So I'm going to do a few more stretches. Get that there, safe. Who's bleeping me? This is incredibly low now compared to what it was. I've been watching your videos. Good. Keep watching my videos. Now this neck has now become a bit heavier, so you have to be cautious or beware of having a good enough strap to keep it supported, but it's not too bad. It's not like an SG. Oh yeah, that's what I was doing. Intonation. Switch this off a minute. Tune on. Okay. Okay. Okay, so these are a little bit sharp, so it means I'm going to pull them all a little bit the other way. Now of course the really wonderful thing about tunematic bridges, as you all know, is that they're all blasted well in line with the string. So any adjustment, it means you have to drag around the blasted screw head with the blasted string in the way. Okay, it's actually not bad. I think we'll be there on the first three. this one has got to come back quite a fair bit more. Horrible. Stiff as anything, doesn't want to turn, doesn't want to play. That means sticky nut, requiring sandpapering, whitening. Too long. Okay, that's interesting. So nearly on, actually. Go. Whichever way this works, that's not where it should be according to this. Pickups are a fraction too high. Let's drop them back a little. Just on the kind of overloading the tone a little bit, it feels to me anyway. I'm just going to do a little adjustment. Final. Oh, I've done that again. Do you know, for about 4 years I've lifted that thing loaded with batteries off there and put it down on the side, and I'm keep forgetting that I've plugged it into the mains now, and I keep grabbing it, moving it without pulling the wire out, and it keeps yanking the wire out exactly as you'd expect it to, with the result that it will eventually break. Right, so one last little looky as we go. Let's see. Ah, got my finger caught in this magnificent camera thing. Look at that. Right, you're going to see what I'm going to do with this. Now, when I get to a situation where I've got some pings, I get myself some sandpaper. Something like 600, it could be a bit meaner than that. And then I go down to the D here, which is doing the pinging. And actually what I can also do is I'm going to have a little shoot here with the what's it? Little shoot with the diamond file. I'm listening out all the time, sorry, no. So I have to unloosen this. No, loosen this off. There we go. Every single time. It's a pretty amazing bracket actually. But yeah, every time I do this I have to loosen that off. Listening for linear, direct, progressive tuning. Still not quite linear for my liking. That is. So it's just the D. So just to help this on its way, slack it off again, shove that out of the way. I'm going to fold over the paper once and then, oh so sorry, undo it to move it. Got to undo it to move it. Got to be in it to win it. Right, so I'm making me a little notch of sandpaper, 600 grit, and then I'm just going to go inside there. And the idea is to go, oh God, go to the edge sideways. I'm trying to widen it more than anything else. Don't want to deepen it anymore, really. I just want to widen it. Now, remembers to move the camera. Now, a lot of people kind of resort to, what's that stuff called? Graphite at that point. And that, you know, that it does help, it lubricates the slots. However, oh, I still quite got the angle of this. Angle and angle of this. Yeah, it does, that's probably alright. It does lubricate the slots and it does help things along for the time being, but it's only temporary, and eventually the graphite will kind of blow away and you'll be left with slots that are gripping. Alright, that's a ping on the A. Right, so this is a brilliant process to get this ironed out now, and I never use graphite anymore. It's funny, I used to, I just won't do it anymore. I want to get it right. From the beginning. Ping. So just keep an ear out. It actually feels down here. You hear it there and you feel it down the end there, because it's the ping is transmitting through the bridge. And that ping is your enemy of tuning, and that will be what stops your guitar staying and playing in tune. That and the slack, but we've we've wrung out most of the slack. So now I'm just doing this over and over until there's no more ping, and then we're done. That's just creaking. So what you're aiming for is progressive, smooth tuning that's direct, and I call it linear. It means it goes up smoothly, or the pitch increases or the decreases smoothly, and you feel it doing it directly in relation to what you do, not in kind of lags and pauses. So some people think those pauses are caused by gears or something missing from down there. It's not the case. See, A still has to do some work. The lags and sort of apparent spinning gears, if you like, is caused by the string sticking in the slot, and it sticks there, and while you busy turn a little bit, nothing's happening. You're building up tension on one side, on the tuner side of the slot, and then what happens is it goes ping and releases. And then that evens itself out, and the pressure equalises with the ping. Close. Bit more still. You can hear it, that little teak noise. It's so difficult to do. Sometimes it might be good, if you've lost track of where you are, just go back just gently to the actual chosen nut file, and be careful obviously not to go further down, but just helps to widen that a little bit and just clear out any obstructions. Still a bit slow in responding to me. It's really subtle. I'm going to give it one last go with this, just to try and clear out anything that's getting in the way. It's a very light sort of side to side touch. Obviously once you slack off and do back up, you get some slack back in there. You need to stretch it out. Here we are, done. Hope that was useful, Tim, and I hope you enjoy playing this. If, and this isn't at all unlikely, if it's too low an action for you, and sometimes it is, just remember you don't have to play it at that action. I've set it as low as it can go with fret leveling. What I recommend is you just turn counterclockwise to raise it by half or quarter of a turn a time on each post, whatever you want to do. Just remember where you came from and then go back if you want it that way as well. So there you go. Epiphone AFD, low light action now. Beautiful tuning stability. Nut slots perfectly right without any graphite in them at all. New tuners on, other holes filled, filled with wood and just touched up with a little bit of cherry paint. It's not invisible, of course, but it's not, doesn't stand out a mile. So there we go, ready to go. Cool. Thank you for watching.